5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the September meeting of the Mansfield Shire Council. I'd like to welcome my fellow councillors, council officers, and members of the public who may be tuning in here tonight. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of Her Royal Highness Queen Elizabeth II as we begin this meeting. Her death follows a life dedicated to duty and service spanning generations. She's been a true inspiration to many. The Queen's portrait has been proudly displayed in our Shire chambers for 70 years as councillors serve in local government within the Commonwealth. Our condolences to the new King, Charles. Thank you very much. I'll now call on each councillor and ask them to verbally confirm that they can see all councillors and hear the proceedings. Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mayor. I can see all councillors and council officers and hear the proceedings.
And Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. I'll now ask councillors to confirm by raising their hands that they could hear each other's statements. Thanks, councillors. Madam CEO, do we have any apologies tonight's meeting?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We have no apologies.
Thank you. I'll now call on. I'll now read the statement and call on each councillor to confirm their commitment. The statement of commitment is, as councillors of Mansfield Shire, we're committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Councillor Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will at all times faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Councillor Holcomb.
I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Rabi.
I confirm my commitment.
Councillor Sladen.
I confirm my commitment.
And Councillor Webb.
I confirm my commitment.
Thanks, councillors. I'll now call on Deputy Mayor, Councillor Mark Holcomb, to recite Council's acknowledgement of country.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Taungurung people, and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We would also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Item number 6 is disclosure of conflict of interest. I'll now ask each councillor to declare whether they have any conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items this evening. Councillor Holcomb.
No conflicts of interest, Mr.
Mayor. Councillor Rabi.
I have no conflict on any agenda items listed this evening, Mr. Mayor. Councillor
Sladen.
I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items this evening.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I've got no conflict of interest in relation to any agenda items tonight.
Thanks, councillors. Item number 7 is the confirmation of minutes. Councillors can either motion in relation to item number 7. Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held on 16th of August 2022 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Holcomb. Councillors, all those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. There are no representations or notices of motion tonight. So, councillors, item number 10 is the Mayor's report. Could I please have a motion in relation to that? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, I'd like to move that council receive the Mayor's report for the period of the 4th of August 2022 to the 7th of September 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Sladden. Anyone wish to speak to that motion? No, then I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item number 11, reports from council appointed representatives. So the current committees are the Australia Day Awards Committee, which has not met since our last meeting. The Mansfield Shire CEO Employment Matters Committee has not met. The Goldman Murray Climate Alliance. Councillor Webb, you've got a report.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. In August, we held the AGM and general meeting for the GMCA. We've launched now our new 4-year strategic plan. This year marks the 15th year anniversary for the GMCA. So this has now been a model which is recognised in Victoria as best practice and is also actually spreading over the globe as a great model for addressing climate change at the local government area. Since the Alliance began in 2007, to date, it's cumulatively avoided the production of around about 70,000 tonnes of carbon dioxide and saved a combined value of around about $11.5 million for its members, which is a great number, no matter how you cut that through and have a look at it. During the meeting, I was re-elected as the chair of the committee, and moving forward in conjunction with our executive officer, Carol Hammond, we have a strong plan to do a bit more stakeholder engagement with all of our member groups to increase the profile of the group, spread the word and encourage members to join. We're also planning to put a councillor forum together specifically for the member organisations and the attendees who are councillors, just to provide councillor-specific information, networking opportunities and training in the climate space. And that's a lot. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. The next committee is the Mansfield Shire Council Audit and Risk Committee, which has met. So on the 14th of September, the Audit and Risk Committee met, and myself and Councillor Holcomb were present. We approved the annual work plan going forward for the next 12 months. We changed the annual meeting schedule, 4 meetings, a quarterly meeting, but now 2 will be in person and 2 will be online. I think the 2 in person will be in the summer and spring, and the 2 online ones will be in the winter months. We reviewed the annual financial reports and performance statements, some of which will be detailed later in this meeting tonight, and we reviewed council's fixed asset valuations, which interestingly enough showed a 44% increase in the land values of Shire's fixed assets. So they were the main items on the agenda for that meeting. Councillor Holcomb, did you have anything further to add?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. And yes, I would. I'd just like to say that the chairman of the committee, Mr. Bruce Potgieter, who'd been chair for the full term of his 3 years, he's now informed us that he won't be renewing his term, which I think from our council's point of view, and personally, is a great shame. Bruce did a tremendous job as the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee. He showed great leadership of that committee. He ran the committees very well. He was totally independent and quite fearless with the questions that he asked, which is ideal for an Audit and Risk Committee chairman. Also, unlike a lot of committee members, he actually read all the notes and all the minutes, and he was across all details. So that's also a positive if you're on the committee with him. To replace him is going to be very difficult, and I know at the moment there's we've advertised and are now about to canvass potential nominees for that position. But Bruce will be sorely missed, and he did a great service for us over the last 3 years. So I thank him very much on behalf of all of us.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Holcomb, and I would totally agree with your comments there. I think 2 meetings that I've done with the Audit and Risk Committee, he's been a great leader of that committee. So, yeah, sorely missed, but congratulations and thank you for his time spent on that committee. The Municipal Association of Victoria report. So myself and Kirsten and, sorry, Madam CEO and Councillor Rabi attended the MAV State Council meeting last Friday. The main reason for the meeting was for a change of rules around how the MAV operates. Basically, the new rules were to modernise the organisation to make the rules clearer and better understood and address some oversights so that MAV could fulfil its role and functions more efficiently. There was one fairly contentious rule change, which was Rule 19.3, which gave each delegate in attendance 1 vote. So what that did was it took the plural votes out of some of the bigger metropolitan councils. So quite a few of them weren't happy about it, and there was a very rigorous debate for a good hour or so. But eventually the rules got put to the vote, and they passed 75% of the councils in favour of. Actually, 75% of the voters were in favour, but it was more like 80% of all councils or 81% of all councils were in favour of the change of the rules of 1 council per vote. So it was a good conference and it was well attended. So yeah, that's about all for that. Rural Councils Victoria. Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mayor. Just before I report back on Rural Councils Victoria, I would just like to also offer my appreciation and thanks to Bruce, the former or the outgoing chair of the Audit and Risk Committee. So thank you, Bruce, for your attention to detail and your service over the past 3 years. Thank you. So CEO Alexander and myself attended earlier this month the Rural Councils Victoria Forum in a very cold Daylesford. And it was a very good day in terms of sharing of the concerns that rural councils of Victoria are facing. In terms of Rural Councils Victoria, they released their election platform. So they asked for both the major parties in the forthcoming election. And all of these areas, I'm sure, will ring home to not only the people in this meeting, but also everybody who's watching. The first one is the urgent need to upgrade and maintain much of the dilapidated rural roads network. Greater funding for the fair provision of services for rural communities, and this is everything from kindergartens through to libraries. The third one, more housing in rural Victoria to meet increasing local demand for workers. There was a great presentation by Ben Rimmer, who's the CEO of, I think it's called Houses Victoria. Madam CEO, you may correct me on that. But that is the current state government's program. And what was interesting out of that session, in fact, it came from research the Rural Councils Victoria had undertaken, And there is a requirement for 87,400 new houses in rural Victoria, that's not regional, in rural Victoria in the next 15 years. And as you know, we are experiencing the influx of the population boom. And so that is something that is quite close to home. Another one close to home is their call for greater emergency management and natural disaster preparation and mitigation funding, support for rural tourism businesses, and finally continued or ongoing funding for RCV to continue the great work that they do in representing the rural councils. And this is one forum, one body that is very important for Mansfield Shire Council as a small rural council to be a member of. And I'm sure there will be some work coming out of that. Again, with we had the new manager, Paul Eunice, the new secretary of the Department of Transport, who gave a great presentation as well. Myself and the CEO had a one-on-one with him and highlighted a few of the areas where we would like to be addressed for the Shire. So thank you, Mayor. That's the report.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to item 11? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council note the verbal reports provided by councillors in relation to representation on external committees.
A seconder for that motion, Councillor Rabi. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 12 is public question time. We have no public questions tonight. Item 13.1 is the Chief Executive Officer's report. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries of Ms. Alexander? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the our CEO, Kirsten Alexander. Kirsten, I'm assuming that on page 2, that the road maintenance pending or overdue. We've got 5 items there. My assumption would be that we've had some incredibly difficult conditions lately with rain and a very wet winter. Is that the reason?
Yeah, that is correct. You can see there's quite a high number of events that were closed, but yeah, this is obviously looking at the ones that are still outstanding. And yeah, it is when it's that wet, it's actually not really safe for them to get out grading. So they do try and get to those to close out those events as quickly as they can in accordance with our road management plan.
Right, I have one more question through you, Mr. Mayor. On page, bear with me, page 8, with the car park in High Street, our new car park. We're on budget and on time with that, apparently, but how are we going with that? It'd be good to get some movement on that. I noticed that car parking during the start of the school holidays was pretty tough again down the main street.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, that's an excellent question. We are aiming, the Capital Works team are aiming to get a temporary car park up and running, as the report says. They're in the process of putting out an RFQ for the design work, but in parallel with that, they're also looking at getting some prices so that we can get something done, you know, in that lead up to the December school holidays, just to make it safe. So pretty much just putting some gravel down there, and you know, and a way of delineating where the car parking areas are. So they are actively working on that one. Yeah, and we will definitely give a further update to council on that.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mayor. This is not a question, but just a vote of congratulations on one of the items in the report, in the CEO's report, and that is on the Bonnie Doon community plan. I would like to acknowledge both the general managers in attendance and their staff for their contribution and coordination of that. And we certainly look forward to the draft plan and further discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Can I have a motion in relation to item 13.1? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. The Council receive and note the Chief Executive Officer's report for the period 5th of August 2022 to 13th of September 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Raby, second the motion. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Raby. Okay, all those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13.2.1 is the Statutory Planning Service Review Annual Update. Responsible Officer is Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Melissa Crane. Councillors, do we have any queries or questions for Ms Crane? Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mayor. Firstly, I would like to congratulate Ms Crane and also previously in her previous role, Madam CEO, in the review of the planning department, which was instigated under the previous council, and I'm very pleased to see the results that have come through. So well done on to all of the team involved in getting the fantastic results that are outlined in the report. My question, Ms Crane, is in relation to the 60-day time required, well, not required, but, well, yes, it is required, to process. My question is, how much has the changes in state government legislation and planning legislation led to an increase in the work that planning consultants, everyday people needed to compile information to put through to council, and what effect is this having on that 60-day period?
Yes, certainly. Through you, Mr Mayor, the experience that the planning team are having is that planning applications are becoming more complex, and the assessment of the various different provisions that they need to consider with any application are becoming, they are more complicated than they used to be. So there is still some simple applications, but there's certainly a lot less of those than there used to be. That does have an impact on elapsed time. So yes, we're meeting statutory timeframes a lot more than we used to, but there is still a lot of work to be done, and the team are continually looking for ways to improve the elapsed time that a permit is being dealt with. That's impacted by, there's been a big increase in the number of permits, and I'm incredibly proud of the planning team and the work they put in this space. They work really hard, long hours, and they are under a lot of pressure. So they are working constantly to look at ways to improve their processes and the way they're dealing with the application to improve that elapsed time, because that's probably the next big ticket item for us to work on in terms of improving our processes and procedures in this space.
Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Ms Crane, and yeah, I endorse what Councillor Sladen said. It's a great result to this report, to this review. Are there any major issues in this review or major items that were tabled in the review that are still to be completed?
Yeah, through you, Mr Mayor, the main thing that's actually going to have a really big impact on how we process and how we are able to communicate with our communities and our applicants in relation to planning applications is our software. So we are looking, it is part of the digital transformation strategy in year 3, but we are looking for alternative funding means to try and bring that forward if we can, which would actually help the rural transformation project that General Manager of Community and Corporate, Ms. Velkat-Blackett, is working on as well. So working closely together to try and find a way to improve those software elements and bring those improvements forward sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to item 13.2.1? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to move the motion that Council receive and note the Statutory Planning Services Review Progress Update.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. The seconder, Councillor Raby. Councillor Holcomb, would you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a terrific result that comes through in this report. I remember probably about 2018-19 being in a meeting of a whole lot of business people from around town in the Shire chambers with the CEO at the time. And the question was asked, what do you want council to do to improve things? And there was only one comment: fixed planning. And that was a unanimous comment from probably 25, 30 members that were at that particular meeting. And well done to the previous council for getting this review underway in 2020. And since then, there's obviously been significant improvements, and it's a pleasure to read some of those numbers and to see that 90% of all planning applications are processed within 60 days is a credit to Melissa, to you and your team. 5 years ago, that figure was about 40%. So that's a dramatic change, which is actually showing up in a whole lot of different areas. And we get various feedbacks, even in the community satisfaction surveys. The form of feedback, the feedback had improved greatly over what it was in previous times. So it's just a terrific result all around. And also, I think one thing that comes through in all this that's really important in all this is we as a council are trying to work very hard on many fronts to balance the increase in house prices and the shortage of houses. And one way that we can influence house prices is to ensure that there's enough land available, and land available for development of houses of different sizes, different values of houses. And I think the work that is done by your team, Melissa, goes a long way to achieving that objective, and for us to get as many houses of different shapes, sizes and prices on the market as possible, and trying to address this situation. And part of that is also that we have to continue to strategically ensure that land is available to meet the market demand as we move forward, but responsibly do that. Just on a note, as it's a specific mention to one of your team members, Melissa, since this report came out, I've had 2 responses regarding planning, and I'll mention your statutory planner's name, Claire Wilkinson, both extremely positive in terms of how she responded to requests, the action that she took, and how patient she was. So that's a personal response which backs up the results of that report. So well done.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Raby, a second. You to wish to speak to the motion?
I do, Mr. Mayor, and it's very difficult to beat Councillor Holcomb's most eloquent view of the planning department. And all I can say really is to all, especially Melissa, who took on the poison chalice, quite frankly, to lean into the harness and to change it is an incredible amount of work. We realise that you've got more to go, and all your team, and we're very grateful of your efforts. There's a lot of work in planning now, and this also, you know, reflects the increased workload, higher level of complexity of the applications is one of the things that came out in this report, the complexity of the applications from outside areas such as DELP and water authorities and such like. But I think that the last election, it was very clear the elephant in the room was planning. And I think that the previous council, I must say, to ask for a report into planning, got the show on the road. So well done, members of the previous council as well. So a little bit of work still to go, but we're nearly there. And really, that's enough for me, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Melissa.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Item 13.2.2 is the Resource Recovery Centre increase in commercial industrial waste charge. The coordinator of waste management is Sean Langlangs. Is Sean coming in? No. So any direct questions directed to the acting general manager of infrastructure and planning, Ms. Crane? Councillor Raby.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. As being the ex-chair of the local government Northeast Waste Committee, I understand that landfill is a huge problem, and I suppose my question here is, it's impossible to answer this question. How far are we going to go with these waste increases? You know, council have to pick this up. The increases are not from council; they're external increases. Have the council officers any idea of the year ahead? Has anyone given you an indication, Recycle Victoria, of possible increases for next year or the year after?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that through you, Mr. Mayor. So the EPA levies were set by the EPA a number of years ago with a fairly large increases over a number of years. This is at $62.95 is the highest it gets to, and then it's increasing by CPI after that. So that's the indication we've got in relation to the EPA levy. But the landfill disposal charges, the ones into Benalla, they've traditionally been going up between 5 and 10%. Because the cost and the requirements to operate a landfill are getting higher and higher. So the reality for us is our predominant goal is to find ways to minimise waste to landfill, and we're working really hard to do that, which is part of why we're undertaking the collaborative procurement with other councils in terms of trying to find the best value for money for our waste services, at the same time as doing deliberative engagement with our community to work out what services they would like to have. At the same time balancing maximum diversion from landfill as our predominant overarching goal when we're making decisions in relation to waste. I hope that answers the question a little bit.
It sure does. Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you.
Any other? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, are we, in your view, are we fully cost recovering our costs out of this cost centre?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in terms of the commercial waste, we're not at this point, which is why we've recommended outside of the normal budget process to have this increase included in our charges, because I don't want to wait till the end of the financial year to do that. I do believe that with our curbside, we are cost recovering now. We haven't always in the past, but we have done a lot of work to analyse the charges and the volumes and waste impacts of our for the waste stream to make sure that we are cost recovering. In light of the difficulty of managing a budget like this with the changing environment that waste is. We are working fairly closely as an executive management team on a monthly basis to keep track of those costs and identify when they may be getting beyond what we would like them to be, and work ways to make sure we can pull that back in and keep those costs to our ratepayers low as possible.
And, sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to confirm for those listening, the objective of what you're trying to do is to recover all costs from waste.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. At the same, with due consideration of the fact that we are these charges are made to ratepayers, so we want to cost recover, but at the least amount of cost to the ratepayer at the same time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mayor. Ms. Crane, can you confirm that what's being proposed here is an increase in commercial waste only and not residential waste?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. That is, it will only affect when we're taking commercial quantities of waste at the Resource Recovery Centre.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. And if I may, a subsequent question, what consultation has taken place with commercial operators with this proposal, if any?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of the setting the cost, we haven't spoken directly with them. They understand that waste is supposed to be a cost recovery model. Our next steps will be to work closely with the affected parties. They will have other options. If they want to continue to bring waste to Mansfield, they'll be able to do it at the charge we are. The alternative is if they believe that a weighbridge would be a better option for them, they can take their waste directly to Benalla. And they'll have that option that they'll be able to weigh up themselves if they want to try and minimise their own costs. In terms of the smaller operators who may have more recoverables than others, they will still have the option to, we'll work with them to provide them with an opportunity to put their waste down, allow us to separate and charge once we make sure we're 100% certain of how much of that is commercial waste to landfill rather than just recoverables. So we are going to work with people fairly closely to make sure that we minimise their charges where possible, but still not in a way where we're not recovering our costs.
Thank you, Ms. Crane.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I move the council increases the charge associated with the disposal of commercial building waste materials at the Resource Recovery Centre from $100 per cubic metre to $250 per cubic metre to reflect the true cost of handling, processing and disposing of this waste stream.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Do I have a seconder to the motion? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, that as I have said since I've got into council, this is waste is a cost recovery. The Victorian government are very keen for us to separate our waste so that we've got less going into landfill. So as my esteemed colleague, Councillor Paul Sladen has indicated and made very clear that this is only for commercial waste, not residential waste. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, as seconder, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Only as much to say that this is a really high priority project for this council. We recognise it's a major issue and it's got some major challenges in front of it. And we just have to get on top of it, understand it better than we have and do it better than we've done in the past. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Anyone else wish to speak to the motion? In that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. I'll now move on to agenda item 13.2.3, which is the planning permit application P057/2022 22. This is for 2 to 4 and 8 to 10 Station Street, Mansfield. Councillors, we have 3 deputations to this agenda item. And we also, is the Coordinator of Statutory Planning, Tim, coming in? No? Okay. So the Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning will be the spokesperson here. So if we could probably get the first of the deputations in now, that would be good. Thanks, Chelsea. Miss Kim Lynch, I think, are you there?
Kim has, I think, dropped off. Would you like me to bring in Robbie McKenzie? And then I'll let you know if Kim comes back.
Sure. Okay. Thank you. Hi, Robbie. It's Mayor Tian here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Just one moment. I'm just going to sort out my camera.
Look like you're in a yay fog. Oh, there you are.
There we are. So camera's pointing the wrong direction.
Welcome to the meeting, and we're discussing item 13.2.3, which is the planning permit application for 24810 Station Street. Robbie, you've got 3 minutes to talk to councillors and then ask any, then maybe answer any questions that are asked. Appears that. Can you hear me? We seem to be having trouble with Robbie McKenzie now.
Kim Lynch has come back, so I'll just put Robbie back in the waiting room and we will give that another go after we hear from Kim.
All right.
So now we have Kim Lynch joining.
Hi, Miss Lynch.
On mute, James.
Kim, she seems to have gone again now. Joys of technology. No. She seems to have, oh no, here she is. She's coming back. Miss Lynch, are you there? You're on mute if you are. No, it doesn't seem to be having any luck there with her, Chelsea.
No, and unfortunately, Robbie has dropped off as well, I believe.
Dropped off as well? What
Yes.
about Mr. Scott Dugan? Is he
Scott has not logged on to join us. So
gone? Okay. Well, while we're trying to sort that out, perhaps I might get the Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning to read out a letter from Mr. Peter Gray, who's written to this agenda item.
Certainly. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. We've received a letter from one of the objectors to the application, Mr. Peter Gray, and I'll just read it without commentary, if that's okay. I'm unable to speak at the above mentioned council meeting and like this letter to be tabled and read to councillors prior to the meeting. Because it's being tabled, we've decided to read it for the meeting for information. He's previously objected to this application, and this letter is in response to that and the application put to councillors. 1, I have previously raised concerns at council and BCAT level about safely and specifically entering and exiting my property, given my driveway is directly opposite the entry/exit point of the proposed development. I'm disappointed that this has not been taken into account. Point 2, I'm disappointed there's been no consideration for having car parking spaces that meet the needs of the community. I acknowledge the guidelines are being met. However, I'm concerned the greater percentage of larger vehicles we have here in the Shire will mean patrons will park outside neighbouring properties instead of in the car park of the development. Point 3, I understand the hours of operation are not being assessed by council in this application. And point 4, I am in agreement with the recommendation to have an acceptable acoustic fence on the eastern side to reduce noise for those living on station streets. Thanks, Peter Gray. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Mayor Team.
Thanks, Ms Crane. Councillors, do we have any questions of Ms Crane just in relation to that letter from Mr Gray? No? Okay. Well, sorry, Councillor Holcomb.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crane, just in terms of the parking and the size of cars, can you just spell out what actually guides us in terms of what size cars, what size parking spaces we can have?
Certainly. Through you, Mr Mayor, the Mansfield planning scheme does specify the size of car spaces that are to be provided under clause 52A6 in car parking. They are the 4.9 metre size car spaces, which are proposed predominantly for this car park at the rear. In order to mitigate some of the impacts and the concerns raised by the objectors in relation to the size of cars that do park, and we acknowledge that we get a lot of larger car vehicles in Mansfield Shire, there are some spaces being provided where the garden bed is being reduced in size to allow for a larger car space. In addition, the driveway itself is 6.5 metres wide, and we're requiring that be one way to allow overhang of some of those larger vehicles from that 4.9 metre length so that will be able to happen without it impeding the ability of vehicles to move through the car space because it won't be open to two-way traffic. So we believe that between the mitigating fact of the width of the driveway and the ability to only go one way, the overhang of vehicles, should that happen, won't create a dangerous situation for vehicles in that area.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. A question in relation to Peter Gray's letter.
Yeah, exactly. To Ms Crane, I'm just looking on the plans of Station Street car parking and just a rough, is it 60 car parks? Is that correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes, it's 59 car spaces.
59, okay. And out of those 59, how many would fit a Toyota Land Cruiser or a Dodge Ram, do you think?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that I would have to take on notice. I don't want to give you a number, but with the overhang, technically all of them can fit it because your driveway width only really needs to be 4 metres wide for a car to get past and have a car overhanging at the end. So technically, because of the one-way traffic and the width of the driveway, they'd all be able to have it. It just would be outside of the lines at the rear.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. There was mention in that letter, Ms Crane, to the location of the driveway. Can you just step us through that and what that could potentially mean for either the design of the site or for the complainant? Yeah.
Certainly. Through you, Mr Mayor, the location of the entrance and exit into the car park is opposite. There is existing driveways on number 5 Station Street and on number 7 Station Street. So the detailed design that will be required to be undertaken for how the site will be accessed from Station Street will ensure that our engineering team give due consideration to mitigating that impact. So there is the ability for that driveway to be located between those two driveways so that the vehicles reversing from number 5 or number 7 Station Street aren't reversing directly into an access to a car park. And it's hard to demonstrate that on the plans because they're not detailed design, but that will be done as part of the planning permit when the detailed design plans are provided.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Ms. Crane. How are we going with the deputations?
I've got Kim. Would you like me to let her in now?
Yeah, okay, thanks.
And then
Chelsea,
Robbie is also in the waiting room for after that.
Great. Take two. Hi, Kim. It's James Teagan here. Can you hear me? We can't hear you because you're on mute.
I'm off. I don't think I can control the mute from my side. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Yeah, great.
Okay.
Thanks for coming along tonight. You are going to speak to the agenda item 13.2.2.
Correct.
You have three minutes, Kim, and then perhaps answer any questions councillors may have.
Certainly.
So, thanks.
Okay, so I'm speaking tonight on behalf of Mansfield Matters Group. Let's call them us MMG, as everybody's known us for a very long time now. And we just thought tonight was a timely opportunity to briefly reflect on where we've been to get to this proposal tonight, which might help you in understanding the last 2.5 years of our life, basically. Take you back to March 2020. We're all in the college theatre. Just at the beginning of COVID, we had over 100 people in attendance, and the council meeting was moved there because of the number of people in the gallery. And also Mansfield FM radio broadcast direct for the very first time. There was 1,000 signatures on a petition, a significant concern from the health practitioners regarding a fast food proposal. And Councillor Sladen, you'd remember that you were part of that unanimous no vote at the time, for which we were also very grateful. Everybody was against the proposal who was there last night, perhaps with the exception of Mr. Mackenzie. And we all thought it was, fast food, drive-through, convenience restaurant, widely thought about to be McDonald's. Let's fast track that 2.5 years on. We're 2 VCAT cases on, 2 panel hearings on, vast amounts of community time, donations, attendance, and representation at these legal proceedings by MMG standing alongside the council, and I must say sometimes leading in those endeavours. And so we arrive here tonight to look at this proposal. What is proposed under the banner of the Commons, which is before you tonight, is located, as we all know, on very sensitive land at the Township Gateway, opposite the station precinct, and all that represents to the town and the people who have worked so hard to build that, sustain it, and plan for the future with it, with the oncoming museum about to start to take some fruition. So it's a vastly different proposition to what we stood and looked at in March 2020, and one that MMG broadly supports. Having said that, it's not perfect, and we still have some concerns. And those concerns in particular relate to acoustics for the local community, stormwater management, car parking, which has been touched on by Peter Gray. And we don't agree with the 4.9 car park and the extra space and whatever. Our cars are too big in this town for that sort of requirement, and that needs further work. There's also concern about operational hours. And of course, the signage plan that doesn't have to have been submitted yet, but of course needs to be very carefully and must say with a great deal of decorum to ensure that this proposed work, which we think will have a really good feel for the town and a good vibe in terms of new opportunities that aren't around opposite the gateway to the town, we think that it is worthy for you to vote yes to. We also
thanks, Ms. Lynch. That's your 3.5 minutes, so gone well over. Could you just wind up?
Yeah, well, just let's say thanks to all the community for all the money, all the time, all the effort. And we think that everyone has had an achievement, including the applicant, with this Commons proposal. And we would like you to vote yes to this proposal tonight, councillors. Thank you.
Thanks, Miss Lynch. Councillors, do we have any questions for Miss Lynch? Councillor Sladden?
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Ms Lynch, not only for your presentation tonight, but your long-standing work that you and your colleagues on MMG have undertaken since your inception. Which leads me to the question for you is, how do you reconcile your recommendation when it comes to Schedule 1 of the Design Development Overlay and the exceeding the height that is in Schedule 1 of the DDO or DDO1? Because that is something that MMG have highlighted on many occasions through the various DDOs and township approaches, strategy, etc., etc. So I'm just interested in how MMG reconciles that previous objection to now.
We have expressed our views about the 6 metre height and the design of the commons being in excess of that, up to I think almost 9 metres at the tip. We don't like it, but we're being pragmatic about this, and the entire build is not at that 9 metre height. It does slope up. We would rather not see it that high, but all things being even, we feel that some things have to give, and we may need to think about that. The applicant isn't interested in lowering that height, and whilst the DDO1 is very specific in saying 6 metres, and that's what we have advocated for 2.5 years and still will be going forward, at the end of the day, we all have to give something, and we think that this is the best way that we can do it.
Thank you, Ms Lynch. That's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Any other questions for Ms Lynch, councillors? No? Well, thanks very much for your presentation, Ms Lynch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. Thank you.
We now have Mr. Yep, is he coming in? Robbie McKenzie. Mr. McKenzie, can you hear me?
Yes, I do, and I apologise for that tech issue earlier.
Well, yeah, welcome back. And yeah, I think we got to the point where I was about to tell you you've got 3 minutes, and then some questions afterwards for you, if there is any to answer from councillors. So, yeah, thanks. Away you go.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just before I start, I did register to speak myself, as well as Scott Dungan, who is the operator of Mansfield Common. He's a late apology tonight, although he has provided a brief statement, which I intend to read out as part of his time allocation. So I'll get into it. So I may.
Okay, so this is his. Sorry, just to make it clear. So this is, you're reading out his statement now, are you first, or yours?
I'll present my part first, and then I'll let you know once I'll move to Mr. Dungan's statement.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Thank you for your time. I'm a town planner and director of Ratio Consultants. I want to start by thanking council officers for their diligence and professionalism throughout this planning process, and to also thank and acknowledge the community for their time and input. It's been a long journey. We say that this is a proposal that offers an appropriate land use outcome that will make a positive impact to the Mansfield Township, will bolster jobs, local tourism, and will also represent a strong addition to the local built environment. And we've participated in the community drop-in session, where we gained a better understanding on the views of the community, and from there we set about reviewing that feedback with our client and the wider consultant team, including acoustic, traffic and architect professionals. We've then put into action a considered response and that's culminated in some discussion plans that are sought to be implemented via permit conditions, condition 1A specifically. We've also made further detailed written submissions that attended to all those outstanding matters that were identified by officers and the community. What we are requesting of you tonight is to put your vote of support behind the recommendation of the Planning Department, which is to issue a notice of decision subject to various conditions. The report before you tonight, we respectfully say, provides a comprehensive assessment against the Mansfield planning scheme, including the provisions of the commercial zone, DDO, and local planning policy. There is one quote that probably jumped out at me that I'd like to just remind you that the officers have identified, quote, the nature of the proposed development and associated use is intended to be a destination providing a tourist experience to visitors of Mansfield that will encourage visitors to stop and support the local economy. The site is well located for such a development and will encourage growth in the area. The report also sets out that there is support or conditional consent from relevant authorities such as the Department of Transport, the Catchment Management Authority, Council's in-house engineers. In respect of a couple of the queries that have been raised just a moment ago, in relation to the building height, this is a matter that has been addressed in the officer report under the DDO section. There is an exceedance of the current preferred height. We say that height exceedance will not be detrimental to the gateway location. In fact, it will enhance the appearance of the development by offering a pitched roof, and that element is well set back from the residential interface further to the east. We'd also note that the council has sought to replace the current DDO with a new DDO under Amendment C48. That amendment is well advanced. It's been through a panel and endorsed by a panel. So that strategic work the council's done has sought to increase the preferred height on the site to 9 metres under the new DDO, and this building would sit below that new height. So that's a document that legally you can give weight to. It's been to panel, and it's something you can have due regard to in your consideration.
I have to ask you to finish up, Mr. McKenzie. Well over 3 minutes now.
Yep, sure. I'm going to move to the statement then Scott Dungan has prepared, and I'll try and ensure this is within 3 minutes. So I'll read it. It says, good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Mansfield Shire Council. I regrettably cannot attend the council meeting in person due to an event I'm running at Falls Creek this evening. However, I wanted to take this opportunity to express the excitement and enthusiasm I have for the Mansfield Common project. I've been fortunate enough to have been involved in the hospitality industry for 35 years as an employee, business owner, and finally as a consultant, and have had the honour of working for and collaborating with some extremely successful tourism businesses and brands. The Mansfield Common project is the culmination of these years of experience, and the complex nature of the offering is unlike any other I have been involved with. However, I feel that the township of Mansfield will be the beneficiary of this endeavour. From the outset of my involvement with this project, I've only ever seen the intention to create a venue that is quite simply a celebration of the northeast region of Victoria, a region that I refer to as my second home after several seasons operating venues in the Alpine region, and of course, fishing, mountain biking and camping in the area of my whole life. It is our goal to create and operate a tourism and hospitality venue that is unlike any other in Australia, one that employs world's best practice in every element of what we do and offer, to bring together the very finest producers, large and small, from this abundant region, and offer a guest experience that truly resonates with the sense of place and is unlike any other. We are only able to attempt this with the support of a community who are able to share this vision, and sincerely hope that we might have that opportunity to fulfil this lofty intention in the township of Mansfield. With greatest respect and sincerity, Scott Dungan, Director and Partner of Mansfield Common. That completes our presentation, and naturally I'd be happy to take questions.
Thanks, Mr. Mackenzie, for your presentation. Councillor Holcomb, a question?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. Mackenzie, for that. Scott Dungan, he's extremely successful with tourism brands. What sort of brands and tourism has he been working on?
Well, he's involved. He's presently at Falls Creek. He's involved in a number of venues of a hospitality and tourism nature. I don't have the specific details of those, but yeah, he has over 3 decades of experience in that profession.
But you don't know what brands or venues they are. It's an example of his work.
I would need to get some instructions on that one, Deputy Mayor. I'm not able to answer that off the cuff.
Right. The signage. Oh, sorry. Just is Scott Dungan? Is he going to be managing it, Mr. Mackenzie? If I'm interpreting correctly what you're saying, is he managing the site? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he'll be involved in the. He'll be. Well, his title here is a director and partner of Mansfield Common, and he would have an ongoing role in the management and operation of the venue.
Right. Thank you. The other question I had was to do with signage. I noticed in the drawings that we've seen, there's no signs there. Where will they show up? Or are there not going to be any?
Look, I dare say there will be signage. It's something that hasn't been developed as yet. If planning permission is required, then that's a separate future planning process that we would undertake, which would come back to council.
Because signage is a very sensitive topic in this town. That's why I ask.
Right.
Does it have?
It's not part of this application before you tonight.
Sure.
There are certain allowances which Ms. Crane can speak to in terms of what the planning scheme allows with and without a permit. It also sets limits on certain types of signs that are just off limits. So we would have to follow the planning scheme controls in that regard. And I'm conscious that the new DDO also puts provisions about signage design and the location of signs, etc., which is something we would have to be following.
Thank you.
Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mayor. Good evening, Mr. Mackenzie. Good to see you again. You raised C48. We as councillors are bound by a point in time decision. C48 is not fully implemented yet. The new DDO has not been fully implemented. So we must assess this application, as I said, point in time under the current DDO. Is there any reason why you haven't complied with the current DDO in the design of your proposal?
Yeah, well, thank you for your question. The C48 is a seriously entertained planning proposal because it has been endorsed by a panel. We agree that the primary consideration is the existing planning scheme control. And in that regard, the design of this building, it's a preferred height limit. It's not a mandatory control that's currently in the DDO. We say, and if I could perhaps refer you to page 17 of 31 of the officer report. Apologies if your page numbering is different to what I've got, which I've downloaded off the website. But you'll see that there's an illustration on that page. This is under the DDO assessment that identifies where the building exceeds 6 metres. So at the residential interface to the east, which is Station Street, the building is 4.61 metres in height. It then rises. There's a sort of a double gable on the end to the the High Street frontage. That's where the building rises above 6 metres. That part of the building is offering a pitched roof line, which is what is sought by the DDO. So essentially, we're looking at 2 levels of floor space with a hat on it.
Sorry to interrupt, Mr. McKenzie. Which DDO are you referring to there? The proposed DDO or the current DDO?
That's the current DDO, the 6 metres. Okay. Yes.
Right.
So
but at the western end exceeds the DDO guideline.
Yes, that's correct. It exceeds the preferred height limit, and the assessment here talks about whether that protrusion is detrimental to the amenity of the area, and whether it impacts views of the Mount Buller and surrounding development. And we concur with officers that there is no impact. To remove that element, you would end up with a flat roof line that would run counter to the policy that seeks pitched roofs in this location. So our preference would be to maintain that current design respectfully.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. McKenzie. That's it. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, Councillor Rabi, you got a question?
Yeah, thanks through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Mr. McKenzie. And it's obvious that the reason why the roof line exceeds 6 metres is that you intend to have training upstairs, and part of the application is for food preparation upstairs. Can you walk me through what the intention of training is upstairs, just to give me a better idea?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor. The training is relating to an educational component. It's tied into the kitchen, and it's really about training the next generation of young chefs. Yeah, that's an element of this project that makes it, I guess, a little unique and something that our client is excited about offering. It'll act as, I guess, a draw card to attract talent and, you know, probably a younger audience, younger employees to the Mansfield Township. There's a pathway, an employment pathway offered for those younger chefs to learn from the best, and yeah, that's what that space is aimed at.
Thanks, Mr. McKenzie.
Councillor Holcomb.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry, just one other question, Mr. McKenzie. If this is approved, what's the time frame going forward in terms of when you get started and completion?
Yeah, I don't have that information, but the permit is allowing 2 years for commencement, which is a standard time frame. I can take that one on notice. To be honest, our energy has really been, or my energy as a town planner has been focusing on working with council officers and to gain an approval. I can come back to you on that one, Deputy Mayor, after tonight, if you would prefer.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks.
Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologise for asking another question. But it's in relation to the fact that the recommendation as it stands, there's a requirement to consolidate the 2 lots. I'm assuming you are agreeable with that consolidation. Is that correct?
Look, that was not a condition we've anticipated, although it's from my experience, it's not uncommon that you'd ask for consolidation prior to commencement. Yeah, so I don't have instruction about that, but I'm happy to say on the record that it's a fairly straightforward and common condition that we see on projects where you've got multi-lot sort of sites being consolidated, amalgamated together.
Okay, thank you. And so just following on from that, one of those lots has an existing permit for a service station. I assume that permit, no, is that not correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, this is the lots adjacent to the property that has a planning permit for a service station.
Right.
So
okay.
it's from the boundary of that lot through to Station Street.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I withdraw my question. Thank you.
Any more questions, councillors? No, in that case, thanks very much for your presentation, Mr. Mackenzie, and for answering the multitude of questions from councillors. So, yep, thanks very much for attending.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all.
Thank you.
So, councillors, having heard those deputations, do we have any questions for Ms. Crane in relation to any of those? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, Ms. Crane, what are the implications around signage? It is something that I was interested in as well. I was going to raise that question as well before Deputy Mayor Holcomb got to it.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the current provision has some the current design and development overlay, which is what we're considering for this site at the moment, certainly has some very specific requirements for signs. So basically, any new sign under the current provisions can't be of a size that dominates or compromises the landscape. It can't be internally illuminated. It can't be reflective. It can't be more than 5 metres above ground level, and it cannot be located between the building line setback and the front boundary. So it'll have to be on the building itself. We can issue a permit that varies those a little bit, but it would be on the exception. So as a planner, even though we don't have a design or a signage plan for it, we anticipate signage would be in the parapet above the door. Would be a logical place for signage to be, and we would be looking at the colours, the materials, and the size of it in context with the rest of the building. That's where I imagine a signage would end up. I hope that assists.
It does. Thanks, Ms. Crane.
Thank you.
Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick one. The reason this is coming to council, is it due to the amount of objections, or is it only due to the amount of general public interest in the topic?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. So it has only got 3 objections, which is an item we could technically issue under delegation, but due to the level of public interest in the site, we felt it was best to make the decision in the public forum.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Sladden.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Crane, sorry to bang on about this, but could you please, for my information and clarity, explain where are we at with C48?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, council officers are looking to make a recommendation to council in relation to a ways forward on Amendment C48. There are 3 options council have in relation to C48, and the panel report has made some assertions or requests or recommendations that have raised some concerns, particularly in relation to things like signage. So we are certainly taking those concerns on board. The options that will be before council will be to continue with the amendment and adopting it in line with the recommendations of the planning panel. Council could also adopt a version of the amendment that's not necessarily in line with the planning panel recommendations. We could also look to abandon the amendment, or council could look to adopt the amendment in part. So we're exploring those options and working out, particularly for our township, because our township approaches are very sensitive. So we are weighing up the different options we have in that space and bringing a recommendation to council that still provides the controls we're missing in some approaches, but doesn't undermine the level of controls and what we're trying to achieve for these sensitive landscapes.
Right. So again, a follow-up question. In terms of the DDO, that is the Design Development Overlay, are you able to explain in terms of the height requirement, what is the current Schedule 1, so the current DDO 1, and the proposed DDO as per Amendment C48?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, the existing DDO 1 specifies a height limit of 6 metres. That said, the way a DDO works is a planning permit can be issued that allows a higher level to be accepted with due consideration to the decision guidelines of that design and development overlay. In this instance, the officer assessment was the walls of the building were 6 metres, but allowing that top of that small section of the roof, which in reality isn't that big an area, to go above the 6 metres to create that articulated roof line with the pitched roof was a better outcome than a flat roof would have had if they had just stuck with the 6 metres. So on balance, it was the recommendation and the assessment that that does achieve a better outcome than being rigid with applying a flat 6 metres across the whole of the site. In relation to the proposed DDO, the exhibited DDO that was in Amendment C48 was allowing a consideration up to 9 metres and requesting a pitched roof. So this would comply with does comply with both DDOs in terms of what they're proposing to do and how council can consider it. As much as it goes above it for the existing DDO, it is still something that can be considered.
Okay, thank you. And just give me a visual picture, if you wouldn't mind. As I come over the hill past Withers Lane, Kidston Parade, come down the hill, am I going to see this western wall pitched roof, or will that be obscured by Mount Buller, Buller ski lift signs?
That, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd have to take that on notice. I don't know exactly where I can't picture the signs in relation, but that they're, when I've been coming in, I do believe with the setback, because it's quite a generous setback from the front, and the fact that it will be having landscaping along the side. I'll also draw your attention to condition 1.B, where we're requiring another change to that elevation more particularly. So for natural timber cladding and or windows to be included on that high portion to try and so we don't end up with all the same colour bond along that elevation. So that we have added that additional control to mitigate and break up that built form as it cascades back into the landscape.
Thank you, Ms. Crane. Appreciate that. That's it, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thanks. Ms. Crane, just as a point of clarification, why are pitched roofs preferred over flat roofs?
To Mr. Mayor. Pitched roofs are better because they're a softer landscape element. So you get very firm and certain built form lines with a flat roof. When you have a pitched roof, you get changes in the articulation, changes in how shadows and light work across the building. So that's why your pitched roof, particularly in terms of a landscape like this, are a preferred outcome. And in addition, you'll also get, it fits in better with the character of the area because it's predominantly got houses and buildings that have a pitched roof around there. So it fits in a bit nicer in terms of it mimics those forms.
Thanks, Ms. Crane.
Thank you.
Doesn't look like we have any more questions. So, councillors, can I have a recommendation in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Rabi.
Now, I will refrain from reading the novel, Mr. Mayor, so I would like to move the motion that is on 48 inclusive agenda tonight.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. You just broke up there a bit, but I take it that you've moved the motion in terms of the page numbers from 26 to page 31. Is that correct?
On mine, I've got page 23 to 28 on mine.
Yep. So
This is, yeah.
Okay, sorry, yeah, I do have yeah. All right, no, that's
You've got the previous agenda.
that's fine. I think I'm out of date. So yeah, I'll. Can I have a second? Thanks for that. Can I have a second of that motion, Councillor Holcomb? Thank you, Councillor Rabi. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it short because Kim Lynch, during her deputation tonight, basically said it all. We're listening to the community. I think that this application respects community views. I'm also very happy with the fact that it's looking at our young people and offering hope and education, along with a lot of other things. I think the applicant now understands community views and that we want to keep our entrance country. I'm fairly pleased with this. I think the Mansfield Common will be a good place to go. I hope that they get on with building it. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb has seconded. You wish to speak to the motion?
no, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I endorse what Councillor Rabi said. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Does anyone else wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. To endorse the comments of both Councillor Rabi, just to add to that, it's a really fantastic outcome, which has mostly been brokered by the council staff, Melissa Crane and her department in particular, to be able to work with the applicant from what was quite publicly denounced and not desired by the majority of the community, to turn it around to something which will be an attraction, a tourist attraction, to add to the texture of the community is a fantastic outcome, and a big thank to council staff for making that happen.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Sladen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'd like to again acknowledge the work of Ms. Crane and her department, and also acknowledge the role that MMG, Mansfield Matters Group, and indeed the proponent, the owners of the site, and the applicant. I am concerned, I must state, that given that Amendment C48 has not been resolved as yet. However, I will always defer to the expertise of our planning staff. So thank you, Ms. Crane.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. There being no more speakers to this motion, I'd like to put the motion to a vote. Councillors, all those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Moving along, item 13.3.1 is the annual financial statements 2021-22. Management business performance. Tony Cooper is coming in. Good evening, Mr. Cooper. Mr. Cooper, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Oh, welcome along.
Hopefully you can hear me.
Yeah, I can now. No, you took a while to connect in, but we've got you now. So we're discussing item 13.3.1, the annual financial statements for 21-22. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries of Mr. Cooper? No, in that case, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item, please? Councillor Rabi.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'd like to move that council approves in principle the financial statements of Mansfield Shire Council for the year ended 30th of June 2022, and that 2, it authorises Councillor Tehan and Councillor Holcomb to certify the Mansfield Shire Council financial statements for the year ended 30th of June 2022 on behalf of Council, subject to any amendments or changes made as required by the Victorian Auditor General's Office.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Webb. Councillor Raby, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think looking at the financial statements proves to me that we're in a very strong financial position. There have been challenges, obviously, receiving some income 75% upfront rather than 50% for the previous years. But overall, I think it's a fantastic outcome, and it proves that we're in good hands, and that I think it's a credit to Tony too, that you've taken the bull by the horns since you've started with us, Tony, and I feel very comfortable with your work. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Councillor Webb.
No comments. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so just very briefly, I think they're a good set of numbers, as Councillor Raby said. We passed the audit with Vago. It was well passed by the Audit and Risk Committee, so I think it's a good set of numbers. I'd also, apart from the work that Tony's done, I'd also really like to acknowledge the work that Dina's done. Dina came in, and the set of numbers, I think, were challenging to sort out. Or the numbers in the system were probably challenging to sort out, and I think there are a lot of things that had to be sorted out. So I'd just like to acknowledge not only the work that Tony did, but Dina, the work that you've done in all this, in heading up this area and getting the numbers together, particularly for the last Audit Risk Committee, which was done under difficulty. So it's well acknowledged. So thank you to you both.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. If there's no more speakers to the motion, I'd like to put that to the vote. All those in favour of the motion? Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. The motion is carried. Item 13.3.2 is the performance statements for 2021-22. Again, the Business and Performance Manager, Mr. Cooper, is a responsible officer. Councillors, do we have any questions or queries in relation to this, Mr. Cooper? No, in that case, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council, point 1, approves in principle the performance statements of Mansfield Shire Council for the year ended 30th of June 2022, and point 2, authorises Councillor Tehan and Councillor Holcomb to certify the performance statements of Mansfield Shire Council for the year ended 30th of June 2022, subject to any amendments or changes made as required by the Victorian Auditor General's Office.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Could I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Raby. Councillor Holcomb used to speak to the...
No, nothing more. Otherwise, same comments applies for the previous motion, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Raby.
No, thanks.
Any other councillors wish to speak to this? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper, for your attendance. The next item is 13.3.3, which is the T&E Q4 report. The responsible officer is Economic Development Officer for Tourism and Events, Gareth McDonald. Mr. McDonald, are you there?
I am here, Mr. Mayor, just starting. There I am here.
Welcome to the meeting. Councillors, do we have any questions of Mr. McDonald in relation to the T&E Q4 report? Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. McDonald, something I've been asking for some time in the T&E quarterly reports is a reference to a very large body of water, namely Lake Eildon, which as of 9 o'clock this morning was 97.26%. We have been briefed by Goulburn Murray Water that it will reach full supply mid-October. I understand that Lake Eildon is not the only lake in the northeast. There is one up at Lake Hume, obviously, which is also at near capacity. Will we ever see our lakes and rivers included in a T&E report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I guess once currently there is more around the Skyline Road that is happening, which did come from the master plan, which was before my time, but from my understanding, T&E were quite involved with consulting and working on that master plan as well. So that Skyline Road tourism precinct, which has now been fast-tracked, will hopefully lead to more. I believe that project will really create a link right around that lake and including Bonnie Doon in that, and then also tying that into the rail trail as well, which goes through there. So I think there is definitely, we do push for it. There are things such as the rail trail projects and things that are happening around that. Obviously, in this quarter report as well, it's more focused on snow, being that it is that quarter. But I'll definitely take it to Tourism Northeast that we would like to see some more things done around the lake, whether that's research into who's coming, numbers, whatever they can sort of help us with on that. So I'll take that to them.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. But just as a point of clarification, T&E were not involved in the development of that plan. That was developed outside of T&E, just for the record.
Yeah, okay, I thought they undertook with Urban Enterprises. I thought it was yes. Maybe they helped with the RFQ or something. Yeah,
they came in late. Thank you.
Councillor Rabi.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. My question isn't to Gareth, and thanks for turning up, Gareth, and representing T&E. My question is to probably one of the general managers. Why doesn't anyone from T&E, given that we pay them $100,000 a year, why don't they turn up and present their report? What? And no disrespect to you, Gareth, at all. Why are we questioning Gareth about this? Where's T&E?
Perhaps
Gareth.
I only recently found out that T&E did used to present. I believe when Amber was CEO of T&E, that she did used to report that, which I found out only this week. So yeah, I'm happy to report it, but I am in agreement that there is probably more questions that they would be able to answer. Obviously, having worked on most of the things that they're presenting, but yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I saw Dina came off mute, so I'll just handball it over there.
Thanks, Gareth, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Look, we're certainly happy to have that discussion with TNE and see whether they would be happy to present at the next council meeting.
Great answer. Councillor Holcomb, did you have your...
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Gareth, there's a couple of numbers quoted here. Visitation up 46%, domestic days up 16.4%, visitor spend up 127%, and overnight up 69.8%. Where do they come from?
So they're the reporting period from April to March. So that's the, and again, TNE can probably go further into how they get their numbers. It is, so they were comparative to the last time that there was pre-bushfires COVID, so 2019 numbers. So we're comparing sort of that compared to the current 2021 to sort of see that we are increasing. We're still not back at levels that we were. But it is good to see in those numbers that, well, good and bad, there is less people, but they're spending more, which is good. But yeah, as far as how they get those numbers, again, I can take that on notice and get that from them. And perhaps we ask them, as Dina said, to present at our next meeting.
I'd like to know the basis of the measurements, where they get the data from.
Mm-hmm.
Is it qualitative, quantitative? I've got no idea. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Mr. McDonald? No, in that case, councillors, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Motion being that council receives and notes the Q4 report from Tourism North East 2021 to 22.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Can I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Webb, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Only just to say it's good to see a little bit more detail on these reports than previously. I've questioned previously whether or not we're getting value for money, considering the amount of money that we put into TNE. Seeing some proper data starting to come back through is encouraging, but also reflecting some of Councillor Holcomb's comments. It's good they've given us numbers, but how did they get the numbers? Let's get some more information from them.
Councillor Holcomb as seconded to the motion.
No further comment, sir.
Any other councillors wish to comment? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? The motion is carried. Thanks, Mr. McDonald. Item 13.3.4 is the Rural Council's Transformation Program, the MOU and governance structure. Responsible officer is General Manager of Community and Corporate Services, Ms. Fleckett. Councillors, do we have any queries in relation to this agenda item? No. In that case, can I have a motion in relation to this agenda item? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I move the motion that Council point 1 notes the receipt of a grant of $1 million for the Rural Council Transformation Program entitled Life Lifting Service Performance through the Share Technology and Collaboration Project from the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions. And point 2, authorise the CEO to sign the memorandum of understanding between Mansfield Shire Council, the lead council, and the rural city of Benalla, Murrindindi Shire Council and Strathbogie Shire Council.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Do I have a seconder to that motion? Councillor Rabi. Councillor Holcomb, you wish to speak to this motion?
Only in as much that this is an extremely important project for the Shire, and the sooner we get onto it and get it done, the better. And the fact that we're leading the project also is a credit to the executive for claiming that role, and we've got a lot of responsibility for managing that as well. So let's get into it.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Councillor Rabi.
Running off the back of Councillor Holcomb, he's right. Records management, financial systems, agenda management, planning, building and regulatory services can all be captured by IT, and where councils generally are, 10 to 15 years behind the rest of the world here. So I agree with Councillor Holcomb. Let's get onto it, get into it, get it done.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Any other councillors wish to speak to the motion? No, in that case, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Motion is carried. Item 13.3.5 is the nomination of a substitute for MAV State Council meeting on the 14th of October 2022. Councillors, can I have a motion, please? Councillor Rabi.
Yeah, I'll move the motion, Mr. Mayor. The council appoint Councillor Paul Sladden as a substitute representative for the association for the State Council meeting to be held on Friday, the 14th of October 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. Can I have a second to that motion? Councillor Webb. Councillors, all those in favour of the motion?
Don't I get to speak to it? Don't I get to speak to it?
No, don't. Sorry, Councillor Rabi. If you really want to, you can. I'll allow it.
I was going to say that Councillor Sladden's going down there to pick up his gong, which is the 10-year award for being a councillor for 10 years. And, knowing how much work there is in being a councillor, I think Paul, you've been there 12 years now, but it's a lot of work. So good on you for going down and pressing the flesh with all the other councillors. Just remember that you're a boy from the bush and you're not from the city. So you've got to look after wood fire burning and barbed wire, mate.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. And sorry to not give you the right to speak to that motion. Councillor Webb, since I've allowed Councillor Rabi to, do you wish to say anything?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors wish to say anything? No. Okay, thanks very much. So we've already voted on that, so we can move on. Well done, Councillor Sladden, on your 10-year medal. Look forward to seeing it hanging around your neck the next meeting. Item 14 is the council meeting resolution actions status register. Councillors, can I have a recommendation for item 14? Councillor Holcomb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The council receive and note the council resolutions register as at 15th of September 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Holcomb. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Holcomb, do you wish to speak to this agenda item?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Webb.
No, thank you.
Any other councillors? All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item number 15.1 is the Audit and Risk Committee meeting agenda and minutes. Could I have a motion? Councillor Rabi, thank you.
Yeah, I'll move the council receive the agenda and minutes for the Mansfield Shire Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 14th of September 2022.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Could I have a seconder? Councillor Webb. Councillor Raby, do you wish to speak to the minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee meeting?
Thank you for asking, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't.
Thanks, Councillor Webb.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favour of the motion? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. There is no sealing of documents. So now I'll move on to item 20, which is to close the meeting. I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance, all the councillors and council officers and members of the public who tuned in. Thank you to the deputations who presented to us tonight and for answering questions that councillors had. And that's it. So enjoy the rest of your night and we'll see you next month. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.